In this video, what I want to talk about is the back-end upsell process that's responsible for millions upon millions of dollars for our company. And just to give you context, if you look at our company from January this year to now, which I'm recording this in October, we've converted on average 57% of our front-end customers into a higher tier back-end program. And just for context, these are front-end high-ticket customers. So these are people who've already paid over 10K for a service, and we're converting them into an even higher tier package at a rate of 57%. And as you'll learn in this video, that is actually the majority of our business. So contrary to many high ticket businesses that live and die on the front end, our company does the majority of its revenue off of backend, which is very, very common in traditional business. And if you look at SaaS and a lot of different other business models, but in our high ticket kind of bubble, that is very, very rare. So in this video, I'm gonna show you how to do that. It's really gonna be a process to take any front end high ticket customer and at a very, very high rate, convert them into a 30 or even up to 50K back-end customer, or even more. So you're gonna see the pricing and the terms models, the actual word-for-word scripting of what we say on that back-end upgrade call, how we get them on the back-end upgrade in the call in the first place, and so much more. So if you can see on my screen now, you should see this training. If you want this, which includes, by the way, the word-for-word script and everything you're gonna be using to upgrade your back-end customers, comment back-end in the comments, and my team will reach out and they will literally give you this script and all of this training word for word. Okay, they'll just send you this Google Doc straight up. So if you want this, comment back-end in the comments and they'll give this to you. So what we're gonna cover is the pricing and terms guidelines for back-end offers. We're gonna cover the possibilities in terms of deliverables that you can have. We're going to cover how to create stickiness, so how to make your back end as sticky as possible so people never want to leave. We're going to cover how to sell your back end, so the actual sales process of the back end, and then the word-for-word scripting. I'm going to show you exactly what to say, okay? So, pricing and terms, let's get into it. Now, rule of thumb for what we do is 2x the price, 2x the time, okay? So let's say, theoretically, your price is 10K. Now, if your back end program is 20K, it's 2x the price. And let's say let me just back up for a second. So it's 10K 90 days on a front end program. So your back end at 2x the price, 2x the time would be 20K for 6 months. Does that make sense? So your front end program, let's say is 10K 90 days. Your back end is going to be 180 days, 6 months, and at 20K. It's 2x the price, 2x the time. Okay, that is typically the rule of thumb. I even have here, if you do 7.5K for 90 days, your back end will be 15K for 6 months. Now, why do we do that? Because the key is keeping the monthly rate the same. Okay, even if they pay in full, let's say they, $7.5 grand, they just pay it up front. You want to kind of take the length of the program and then basically turn the price point into a monthly rate, and then you want to keep the monthly rate the same. Okay. I have found that is the most reliable way to really determine the price elasticity of your backend. Because if the front end customers, let's say, were able to come in at that 2.5 grand monthly rate, they're likely going to be able to pay that again on the backend rate. Like that's going to be within their threshold. Okay? So the reason I believe this too is people buy on the terms and not the price. Okay? So if you think about how people buy a car, how people buy a home, they care about the purchase price, but they're more worried about the monthly payment, right? So us as humans, that's just kind of how we think. We want to see if we can afford the monthly payment, not as much as the purchase price. Doesn't mean like you can, lock somebody into a three-year, 300 grand contract. I mean, there's a limit to this, but always think about 2x the price, 2x the time. You're usually going to find your ideal pricing. And then as your front end price goes up, your back end price can go up too. Okay? Because you're really kind of validating the back end or the back end price on the front end, if that makes sense. Now, if you want to make your offer even more attractive, then do 1.5 times the price, 2x the time. So now you're ascending them into a higher tier program that's even better, but you're doing that at a reduced monthly rate, which is pretty cool. Okay, so that's going to make the offer even more attractive. You can certainly do that. We don't do that for ours. We just kind of keep ours 2x the price, 2x the time, and I find that works really, really well. But you could certainly do that if you wanted to. It makes it really, really hard to say no. Now, the exception of this is if you have a B2C offer and it's non-ROI, so like dating and fitness, for instance, I'd recommend trying like a $300 to $750 price point, 12-month contract, if you can't do the like high-ticket backend. Still try high-ticket backend, but a lot of times with a non-ROI offer, if you're charging $5K, let's say for dating coaching or fitness coaching on the front end, a lot of times it's just easier to roll them into a year-long sort of community-based program at $500 a month, something like that. So that is pricing and terms guidelines. Now let's talk about deliverable possibilities. So here's the things you can include into your backend. And for context, most of what we're talking about is like high-ticket coaching, consulting, agencies, course-type programs, selling those things, okay? So number one is we can have continuity, meaning continued access to what they've already gotten. I recommend, by the way, keeping continuity in your back pocket is a downsell if they don't take the upsell, and we can talk about that later. But one of the deliverables, of course, is going to be they just continue to get what they've already gotten, right? And there's value in that. Another thing you can have in your deliverables is increased proximity and access, which can mean more access to the guru, if that's you, right? More support. Support could take place in the form of Voxer, one-on-one calls. Maybe you have a special group call for the back end. You could also have monthly expert intensive Q&As with different like really high-level people in your industry, which is great, especially if you kind of promote those a little bit in the front-end group, create some FOMO where they want to get in the back-end group. You can do events and really build a great community with your backend. And I will say, as I put here, this is the most important. Out of any sort of high-ticket program, out of any deliverable you can add into that, I have found the stickiest to be the events, okay? To be the community. Because a lot of folks, especially in an online, let's say it's a BizOp program, for instance, a lot of these folks, this is the first time they've been in a program or in an environment with people who are like them, which a lot of us who've been in entrepreneurship for a little bit, we kind of forget the value of that. And we forget the value of like, wow, like, you know, there was a time where, you know, you were growing up, you were getting out of college or whatever, and, you know, you were the only person in your network who even knew what this online stuff was, and everybody else thought you were super weird, right? And you had no friends who understood what you did. And it's kind of a crappy place to be. And a lot of times we forget our clients, and whether this is weight loss, dating, or whatever, are really going through the same thing. So oftentimes our program is the first thing they ever joined, that they are around a like-minded group of people, and they will pay to stay in that group of people, because that is very, very refreshing if you've never been in that before. And so great barometer on this too. Think about the first high-ticket program you've ever joined, and likely that was your favorite part about it, was the community, and you got to get to know other people who are just like you. You know, and that's not just business too. I mean, if you were working on your dating life, same thing probably. Fitness, same thing, right? Now, dimensionalizing deliverables. So this is really, really important. When you're delivering your backend and your pitch, which we'll talk about later, you want to really make sure that you're dimensionalizing the deliverables of the backend. So instead of saying, let's say, well, we have 4 events a year. So you could say we have 4 immersion opportunities a year where you could essentially come out to, let's say you're in Austin, Texas, come out to Austin, Texas inside of a private, you know, resort that we rent out. And essentially what we do is we get you around a like-minded group of people that's all driven towards the same goals. And there's something about being in a room of people who are just like you, have the same goals. Some people are a little bit behind in the journey compared to you. Some people have already achieved the exact things you want to, and you can really learn by osmosis. So we do 4 of those a year. Now I just like totally ripped that off the cuff, but that is a lot more powerful than saying, well, we have 4 events a year, okay? So you want to try to find ways to dimensionalize the benefits here, dimensionalize the deliverables. That was kind of a mediocre example, but I think you get what I'm saying here. Another one I have is instead of saying, well, you know, for us in our back end, instead of saying, well, you know, you can have some calls with our setter manager, we say we set you up with specific half-day setter intensives with your entire team to where our best setter of all time will hop on with your setters. They'll look at the text messages, the outreach messages, the emails they're sending. They'll look at the voicemails, the call recordings, and they'll basically do a deep dive to really see what is the biggest constraints within your setting team and what are the 1 or 2 things that, if fixed, can take your set per day performance of your team from 3 a day on average to 5, 6, or even 7 a day, which is exactly what he's doing. So you see how it's like dimensionalized, okay? So that is something that when you're pitching your backend, keep that in mind. A lot of people, they just want to say what the deliverables are, right? That's the easiest thing to do. We want to dimensionalize those. So that is deliverable possibilities. Let's talk about stickiness. So the question you want to ask yourself when you're creating your backend is, how do you make this as sticky as possible, okay? 2 main keys for info offers to make them sticky in my experience. Number 1 is community. We just talked about that. That is so important. The next thing that makes it sticky, and this is a little weird, okay? It'll make sense when you get it, but is leadership, okay? So community and leadership. People will stay around if they feel like you can continue to lead them. All right, and this is really what everybody underestimates. So I put here, the number 1 thing people will buy is when you can not only, and they know this, okay? When they know you can not only solve the current problem, but you can see around corners to future anticipated problems, okay? This is also why when you have your front end offer, it's fine to kind of come into the front end with a tactic, but you can lead with a tactic, but what you really want to do is convert them into your way of running a business, okay? And you'll see what I mean in a second. And then if it's B2C or non-RI, it's going to be not your way of running a business, it's your way of living. Like it's a specific type of lifestyle, right? Maybe you're a dating coach and you help a guy go out on the street and meet a bunch of girls or something like that, or go out to the club, meet a bunch of girls, right? So he's going to learn some tactics. That's what's going to lead him in. But how you're going to keep him around for a long time is kind of converting him. It's almost like you're converting somebody into a religion, but it's like you're converting them into a lifestyle and a way of living, and then giving the opportunity with the events to be around people who understand, who are also living that lifestyle, because there's nowhere else that they're going to get that. So you see what I mean? This is what makes it very, very sticky, but you gotta really position things the right way. So as a business example, I put here, instead of selling a YouTube ads training, okay, you could lead with YouTube ads, because that's hot right now, as I'm recording this at least. You can lead with YouTube ads, and that gives them that tactical dopamine hit. But once they're inside, right, we've given them what they want, now we gotta give them what they need, and usually that is kind of the boring stuff, right? We gotta look at their offer, we gotta look at the economics of their business and how things are packaged together. We gotta make sure their lead generation system is healthy, their sales system is healthy, their fulfillment is healthy, and they're getting good upsells, right? And we wanna convert them, even though we brought them in through YouTube ads, we wanna deliver on that promise, have the best YouTube ads tactical training, we wanna convert them into essentially our way of running a business, our model. And the reason why that's so important is once they're running out of our playbook, then they're always going to look to us for the next step, right? So if we do sales recruiting, right, and we're very, very good at it. If somebody comes in and gets a few setters and closers from us, but at the same time, I can point out all these other things in their business, and I can help, fix their offer a little bit. I can actually help fix their ads. I can help fix their fulfillment, and I can get them running my playbook. They're going to look for me the next time they hit a constraint, and it might be fulfillment, right? We fix the sales. Inflow of clients goes way up, and then the fulfillment starts to break, right? That's a natural progression of things. Well, since I've been there and I've done that, and now they're running their business out of my playbook end to end, they're probably gonna look to me like, hey, my fulfillment's broken. Can you continue to help me with that? It's like, yeah, dude, I've been there, I've done that. I can continue to help, which I can, So that I'm telling you guys, that is the key to really, really good upsells, getting them to run out of your playbook. Okay, and then continuing to lead them across new, future, anticipated challenges. Because no matter what you do in business, when you solve the first problem, it's going to create the next problem. And when that next problem is created, you want to position yourself as the default person they're going to look to for leadership. Okay, and that is how you get clients staying for 2-3 years plus. So, community, leadership, those things feed off of each other. In an info business, those are going to be the stickiest things I have found, okay? Now, there's other ways you can make your offer sticky as well. Alex Hormozy, who also has an amazing YouTube channel, I linked it here, so you can check this out. But he talks about increasing collateral, increasing cost of switching, increasing consumption, decreasing choice, increasing cause, community contracts. It was a really, really good video on building recurring revenue models and how you can make your offer as sticky as possible. Because at the end of the day, if you can just get your customers to never leave, you're gonna, just absolutely crush your competitors, right? And really, that's an idealistic goal that we all want to get to. But that video was very, very good. I think it talks more generally with business. If you have a high-ticket coaching business, a high-ticket consulting business, a course business, even agency for the most part, these two things are going to be the big things I would look at. But if you can find a way to have client collateral, if you can find a way to make it really hard to switch off your service, those things make it even better. Now, let's talk about the juicy how to sell it. So, steps are below. Number one is we got to deliver on our promise, right? They come in on the front end. And this is not a game. Like, I don't want to play the game of well, you buy the first thing and then they really get the result, you got to buy the second thing. That's not what we're trying to do here. Like, I want to deliver on the promise on the front end and make the client happy, okay? Now, when we deliver on the promise, sometimes it happens right on time. Like if we have a 90-day offer, we might deliver on the promise right at that 10-week mark, which is perfect. Other times, they come in within 30 days, they're absolutely ecstatic and we've already delivered on the promise. Other times it takes a little bit later. So here's the rule here. As soon as we deliver on the promise and they're ready, we upgrade, we make the offer. If it's early, we can just get a deposit and extend the contract and also build in some form of an incentive for them to take action now. If it's late, maybe they had a slow start, maybe something came up, right? We give them more time, right? Because I want to deliver on the promise, right? I don't want to upsell them just because. I want to deliver on the promise, so they might need an extra 30 days or 45 days. And then we'll position the upsell correctly then, And we've had clients, for instance, where, it might not have been anybody's fault, but maybe some stuff came up and, things didn't go as smoothly as you wanted to. And what we were able to do is give them extra time, really dive in, roll up the sleeves, get in with that client. Now we've turned things completely around. They're ecstatic and they turn into a customer on the back end, right? I mean, that is you really need to be flexible with how you're doing this. But also at the same time, when people are winning, upgrade early because they might love you and then 30 days later, they kind of forgot the magic, right? And they forgot the value you provided. So you need to strike the iron when it's hot, but at the same time, be flexible for people who are taking longer. Typically though, if it's not late or not early, we want to look at about 2 to 3 weeks out. So if your program's 90 days, you want to look at about 9, 10, 11 weeks in. We want to make sure that call is booked. And that call is going to be our upsell call. It's going to be a one-on-one call. Okay? Now, common mistake. Do not call this call the next steps call, or do not call it the ascension call, or the enrollment call. Don't call it that. I personally just like to make it seem like a coaching call. And in my programs, there's already a one-on-one cadence that's happening. So in one of our offers, we have account managers meeting with clients once every 3 weeks, once every 2 to 3 weeks. So we just kind of just position it as it's like a call that it's one of those calls, right? It's one of the calls we always have just to check up, see where they're at, lead them to the next thing. So in short, the client doesn't know the upsell is coming. And as you see with the script, I think that's really important. So we do that. It feels to the client like it's the next natural step in the fulfillment process. And then before we get into the actual scripting, and in terms of how to book it, by the way, guys, I usually just have the dedicated CSM or account manager just reach out and it's hey, we're due for a call, book here. That's all you got to say. Don't overcomplicate it. I also have a whole different YouTube video on training CSMs and building $1 million a month plus CSM teams. We still provide one-on-one support at a multiple 8-figure level and with 250 plus clients a month. So if you need help with that, different video on the channel. But at this stage, we have to decide who is going to take the back-end upsell calls. And there's several different ways you can do this. As with your front-end sales calls, at first, you as the founder should do it. Don't be lazy, okay? I did this till probably we were about at 500 grand a month plus. I did all the upsell calls for my own company. And you should certainly do it at least to probably about 300 to 400. Depends on your price point and stuff, but I'd say until about 300 to 400 because it's really not going to be that much volume, okay? Then what you can do, there's different options here, but you take them to kind of validate out the back-end upsell process, which we're going to go over in a second. Then your account manager can take it. Now, this just depends on your model, okay? So in one of my companies, I have dedicated account managers for every single client. They're the go-to person for everything with the client, period, okay? So they're also the people who are gonna do the upsells. Now, if your account manager, and that is most preferred, by the way, if your account manager does not have the skill set to really do an upsell, then you can have the account manager set them for you. You could have them set them for a fulfillment director who's good at sales. You could have them get set for a dedicated back-end salesperson, which that person could also be your sales lead or sales manager on the front end. So maybe you have a sales manager managing the front-end team, but that guy takes all the back-end calls. There'll always be less back-end calls than front-end calls. Remember that. Okay? Or, and this is the least desirable, you could have the account manager reset them for a front-end salesperson. I don't really like that as much, but you could do it. The best thing is to really just have the AMs do it themselves if they can, but sometimes they're just not skilled enough. And it depends on the offer, right? Like if you're teaching people how to, I don't know, like if you're teaching people how to, start their first couple profitable Airbnbs, well, your coaches, your account managers might be Airbnb experts, also really doing their own Airbnb thing as well. And they just might not have really a great sales skill set. Like they're great at client support, but sales like not so much. So you really want to have like the fulfillment director, maybe who's good at sales, or the sales manager, or you do that, okay? And eventually you can even hire a dedicated back-end salesperson, but you got to be at some pretty serious scale just for that. So preferred option for this, do it at first, then to have your dedicated account manager do it, or fulfillment director, the sales manager, a dedicated person, or least desirable, a front-end salesperson, which I said it's least desirable, it still can work. So if you need to know comp structure and CSMs, how to do AMs, I already mentioned this video, but this video is really, really good in terms of like how to build CSM teams, the comp structure, all that stuff. Obviously, you got to comment back-end below to get this, and this is linked on the channel. So let's get into the scripting, exactly what to say, word for word, to upsell people into 30 to 50K programs. So how do we start the call? Well, number one, it kind of depends on your familiarity with the client. So, when I did this way back in the day, I was the front-end salesperson, and I would upsell the people into the back end as well. So I wouldn't do any of the fulfillment, and that's kind of why it's not ideal. But what would happen is I would sell them, and then my next interaction with them, barring maybe a few back and forth messages on Facebook, would be the upsell call. So I have to have them bring me back up to speed with how they're doing. And so I'll ask, hey man, catch me up. What's been going on the past 8 to 12 weeks? How you doing? Right? And they'll bring me up to speed. And I'll say, hey, I know when you started, you were really working on your offer and getting that solidified. Overall, what progress have you made? Have you found the X, Y, and Z program helpful? What were your biggest wins? Okay, now I'm saying this because in this scenario, in this scripting here, I have not communicated with the client in 8 to 12 weeks. This is why it's also not ideal. If I'm doing a call with a client once every 2 weeks, I can obviously kind of skip this part, right? Like I know where they're at. So this is just a difference here in the scripting. So we get this done, and then we transition to challenges. This is not rocket science, guys. This is, really back-end sales is easier than front-end sales for the most part. But we transition into challenges. So we just say something simple as, okay, gotcha, awesome, amazing to hear the wins. Where do you feel the most stuck right now? Like, where do you feel like you need the most help from us specifically? Now, again, they don't know this is an upsell call. So like, they're just kind of thinking like, oh, like he's just trying to see what I need help with, just for the fulfillment. And what we want to do here is we want to dig into the pain, and we want to kind of understand any of like the 1 to 3 core problems. So typically we find a problem. Let's say he's like, well, it's still just getting appointments. It's like, gotcha. Okay, well, what's going on with that specifically? So we probe, and then we might chunk down, which can be, gotcha, well, give me an example of how that's showing up in your business. Or what we'll do is we'll chunk down by numbers and say, okay, gotcha, well, last month for September, how many new sales calls did your sales team take in total live? How many of those closed? We can chunk down through the numbers that way too. So what we're doing here is we're finding a core problem. It's like we found the problem, then we probe and chunk down. We always do that. Find problem, identify, probe, chunk down. Identify, probe, chunk down. We want to do that up to 3 times. So for somebody, let's say it's a business owner who's a coach and they're at 10K a month, right? We might find lead generation's a problem, there's some fulfillment systems problem, and maybe some mindset issues, okay? Now, what we want to do in this phase called the Need Payoff is we want to see, okay, essentially, if they fix that problem, what is going to be the next problem, really? And also, what is going to be the compelling payoff and benefit? So let's say with the previous example, we were saying, gotcha, so right now, obviously, lead generation is inconsistent. You know, you only had 10 sales calls last month. If we're able to get that to 50 sales calls a month, where would that lead you next? Like, where would the business be? Oh, well, the business would be here, be awesome. We'd probably be doing this amount of revenue. Gotcha. And if you were doing that amount of revenue and had that amount of inflow from clients, what would be the next bottleneck from there? So with this section, what we're doing is really at the simplest terms, all we're doing is we're identifying the first constraint that they're dealing with. And then we're saying, gotcha, well, if we fix that, what would be the benefits, but also what would be the next constraint? All right, this is how we're going to build leadership into our back-end sales process. It's very, very good. So hopefully that made sense, guys. Another example might be like, oh, the guy's like, you know, man, it's really good. We came into the program, we fixed our lead generation, and now like we're dealing with major scalability issues in terms of our back-end, in terms of our fulfillment, and just making sure everybody's getting the support that they need because we got overloaded with clients so fast. You know, and then so we probe, we expand, we chunk down, get some examples and specifics, and then we say, gotcha. Now, if we're able to plug some of those bottlenecks that you're experiencing in your fulfillment right now to where you have no fulfillment capacity issues anymore whatsoever, what would be the next step from there? Like, what would be the next bottleneck we'd have to fix? Okay, so hopefully you see what I'm doing. We're just finding the constraint, and then it's like, okay, well, if we can fix that, what is the next constraint? And you can even do that a third time to where you get a few steps ahead here. Because now we're kind of saying like, okay, like here's going to be the path for this business to scale, or this person, if it's weight loss, dating, or whatever, to scale. It's the same process. Now this doubt is kind of an optional piece here. So what we can say in this part is, let's say after the dude fixes his fulfillment systems, he's like, well, man, then we're probably gonna have to get on another channel because right now our Facebook ads are working, but the CPMs are so high and our margins are running razor thin. So it's working, but we'd probably have to dial in YouTube ads as well. So to create doubt in this section, all you'd simply ask is, gotcha, and so do you have a process for that right now? Or do you have experience with that previously? Or is that something potentially, if we can help with it, you would want it? Right? And remember, they don't think it's a sales call at this point. So you can say a lot of those things a little bit more directly without them like having any sort of sales resistance. So I put here as well as an example. So once we get your paid ads down in and opportunity is not a problem anymore, based on my experience, it's always going to be fulfillment capacity next. So do you have fulfillment capacity completely ready and systematized for scale? Or is that something also you feel like you may need potentially some additional help with? Okay? So hopefully that makes sense, guys. We're creating doubt around the next constraint. And then as we're identifying these constraints and the next constraints, we want to see, we would basically just want to ask, have you invested in any other outside help to address those? Right? So maybe somebody comes in your program, they fix lead generation, now they're like, oh dude, I'm drowning in fulfillment. We want to simply ask, gotcha, I mean, have you invested in any help so far, any coaches? Have you brought in any other consultants to help you with the fulfillment specifically? And the reason we want to ask this is because we want to know with our pitch, like fulfillment might be the main problem, but we don't want to like base our pitch all around the fulfillment and fixing that now, and then they actually went out and hired somebody else already, right? So we want to make sure, like, one of the biggest reasons I see upsells fail is they came into your coaching program, and then during that, maybe they got the result, but then they kind of started to deal with some other stuff and they hired somebody else too. Very, very common. So we want to get that out beforehand. Same way on a front-end sales call, we want to know, well, what have you tried in the past to fix this, if anything? Have you tried any other coaches? How did that experience go? We want to know all that stuff. Then we go into desire, and all we're doing here is we're just checking to see if the original goal is still the same. So maybe their original goal was 100K a month, and you just would say, gotcha. So is the ultimate goal still 100K a month? And getting the business to a point where you have execs running it, you're not the one running it totally? Okay, perfect, right? We just kind of want to recap the desire. Now at this point, this money and support portion is optional. So it really depends. Like, you've probably already sold to this person, so you kind of know, like, are they going to have a money issue, or is it like not an issue at all? Like for a lot of my clients, they have money. Okay, like they're doing $250,000 a month, $500,000 a month. Like I don't need to see like what their cash on hand is. But sometimes, and I've sold offers before, where you're helping people get started for the very first time. And so if you know, like, man, them upgrading into this backend thing might be a crunch financially, you can literally just ask, like, okay, and by the way, how's cash flows right now? Like, oh, okay, it's pretty good. And you can literally just throw in there, gotcha, like, what's your cash on hand exactly? And they will tell you. I mean, I'm not even kidding. You might be like, wow, that's an invasive question. Well, they'll just tell you if you ask it with confidence. So I would say, like, how's your cash on hand? Or I'm like, how's your cash flows? Are things tight? And like, oh yeah, they're like kind of tight. Gotcha. Like, well, what's your cash on hand right now? And they will just tell you. Okay. Well, this is good because if they're like, dude, I'm down to like $500, well, they're probably not going to buy your 30 grand year-long program, right? Unless they have credit. So keep that in mind as well. So we can get that information out before. It's very, very similar to a front-end sales call. It's just in this kind of setting, it's a lot more lax, because still to this point they think it's a coaching call, right? They think we're just like trying to figure out where they're at. Now, this is kind of where we start the transition. So we do what's called outlining the next steps. And so we say, based on what I'm seeing here, the first thing we're going to have to focus on is basically constraint number 1. So what we're going to do to fix that is action items. That way you can benefit. Make sense? Cool. And then the next thing, once you fix that, we're going to have to focus on is this. So the way we're going to do that is action steps so that you can benefit. Make sense? So you'll see how I do this here. In the example, and I'm just repeating the core problems and constraints I found and the next step constraints. So the very first thing we're going to have to do is get your and I'm just reading this here, guys. The very first thing we're going to have to do is get your app cost down so we can ramp up paid ads and max out your calendar. That alone will get you to $100K a month based on the rate you're currently closing at. So what we'll do immediately from here is get you in an intensive with our in-house media buyer, Jim, and he can push you through that bottleneck ASAP. Make sense? So you see what I just did there? I didn't follow the formula exactly, but it's pretty close, right? And so it's like I'm saying, here, the first thing we're going to do is fix this constraint. It'll result in this benefit. So what we're going to do to do that is action step. Okay? Now, once that's fixed, the next thing we're going to have to focus on is the next constraint. Okay? So in this example, it's paid ads and maxing out his calendar. So let's say, once he fixes this, the next thing is going to be sales team, right? So we say, that'll push you through the paid ads bottleneck ASAP. Now, once we have paid ads figured out, your calendar is going to be maxed, and your next constraint is going to be availability, right? There's going to be only so many calls you can take in a day. So the next thing we're going to have to do there is probably get you with our sales manager. He can actually map out the entire process we use to recruit, hire, and train top 1% sales reps. They can close just as good, if not better than you. And then that way, we can get you off the phone, buy back your time, and get you in a place where you're working on your business, not in your business. So from here, that's the second thing we need to be doing. Make sense? Like, yep. And then once you get to that point, you're going to be off calls, and it's really time to scale the marketing, scale the sales team, and learn how to run your team through your executives. So building out your executive leadership team, and it's really going to be focused on leadership, running your meetings effectively, creating a great meeting cadence, an offsite cadence, and all of the stuff that's really going to turn you into a real company since you're actually scaling. Does that make sense? Perfect. So to do that, what we're going to do is get you with our CEO. He can overview this process, blah, 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 blah. So hopefully that made sense. Basically what I did is I outlined the constraints and our action items and the benefits around that. And then we're going to say at the very end, so those are the 3 steps from here I think we need to do. Do those make sense? They're like, yep. Cool. Do you agree those are the best next steps from here? They're going to say, yep. And then you're going to say this little transition phrase here. You're going to say, so that's exactly what our X, Y, and Z mastermind would be for you. So that's exactly, let's say your program's called, I don't even know. Let's say it's called Inner Circle, right? That's a very common one. So those 3 steps are exactly what we'd be doing with you in Inner Circle. So I don't know if you've heard much about Inner Circle, but what questions in terms of that do you have for me? I can also just walk you through exactly how Inner Circle works, pretty much A to Z if you would like, but all where you want to go. So you tell me. So that's kind of how we transition. Does that make sense, guys? So basically what I did here is I outlined the constraints. It's like constraint number 1, what we're gonna do to fix it, benefits of fixing it, that's gonna lead us to this next problem, and then I repeat that for 3 to 4 problems. Okay, and I'm future pacing all the way around because I'm like, we're gonna get you with this person, we're gonna have you go through this content, we're gonna have you out to the event. So I'm future pacing us working together. They don't even know it's a pitch. And then I get them to agree. I say, do you agree? Do you agree that'd be the best next steps from here? They're like, yeah, totally. It makes perfect sense. And then we position, they don't really know it's a sales call until this part. So that's exactly what our inner circle program would be for you. That's exactly what we'd be accomplishing in inner circle. And then we transition. So at this point, all you do is you explain, I talked about this earlier, you explain the dimensionalized deliverables. So what you would say, they would be like, yeah, just walk me through the program A to Z. Perfect. Well, first of all, do you have a pen and pad? And they're like, yeah, cool. Get that down. Now, the first thing I want you to write out is not information, is execution. Because what this is not, is it's not us just giving you a bunch more course training modules and information and all this stuff and putting more stuff on your plate. Okay, you already have that. This is not about information. It's about implementation. It's about execution. And it's about really getting you more focused as a CEO, taking stuff off your plate and focused on the things that really drive the needle forward. That's what this is all about, right? Now, the first thing we're going to focus on is those 3 things we talked about. We're going to focus on, and you repeat it. Boom, boom, boom. Now, in the program, there's multiple different things you get in addition to what you've already gotten to working with us so far. And then you state the dimensionalized deliverables, and you state it, explain it in a dimensionalized way, and you say, does that make sense? Cool. Questions on that, or want to move on to the next one? Then you move on to the next one, and then basically you go through all of that, and then you say at the very end, makes sense, questions on that, do you feel good? We talked about getting to 100K a month, right? On the beginning of this call, do you feel like this is what you need to be able to get there? That's the temp check tie down, and then we state the price at the very end and objection handled. So that's basically it. Usually these are pretty chill, and if you do it like this, it's like a really, really good process, and typically they buy, a lot of them will buy. The main issue I see with high-ticket businesses with their upsells is they don't even do this. Like if they just tried to get the people on a one-on-one phone call and actually close them into a back-end something, they would make a lot more money. So hopefully you guys implement this. This is a massive, this is where in our B2B side of the business, this is where we make the majority of our revenue, is literally just the back end. And that is a game changer when it comes to trying to acquire customers profitably and have really good LTVs, so on and so forth. So anyways, guys, that's it for the training. Comment backend below if you want this document with all the scripting on it. Happy to send it to you. And then as always, if you need sales reps, need setters, closers, need help with your sales team, sales training, any of that stuff, sales consulting for your team, we are the best in the business. So feel free to send me a DM on Facebook and I can give you some info on that.